Welcome to Stillspeakpod. Developments continue to unfold in the Murdaugh family Dynasty murder mystery. Starting to feel like I need to say family dynasty murder mystery and more, because there's so much more than the deaths of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. And we're coming up on the 5-month mark of when Paul and Maggie were murdered. One of the first things I usually do when I see a case is I hit up Google Earth, right? I want to know where we're talking about. I want to see the land, see the layout, what houses are close, and so much more. It's one of the first things I do. But for some reason, I didn't do that with this case. I just did it today, but I didn't do it before. So I went to 4147 Moselle Road, which is their 1,700 plus acre property that Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were killed at. And one of the first things I noticed, and maybe other people knew this or they noticed it, and this is just new to me, but I'm sharing it in case others don't know it, is that right behind their property is Salkehatchie River. And the reason it stuck out to me is that Alex's shooting, quote unquote, shooting, back in September with the insurance fraud scheme was on Salkehatchie Road. So I'm like, what? That's weird. Okay. Not too weird. Maybe they just named the road after the river. Okay. And so I looked it up, and I guess I never realized how close the shooting was to his home that his son and wife were killed at. I mean, it's like under 10 miles. The way the media was reporting it, they made it seem like it was much further. It didn't do it any justice. It's actually very close. And then what stuck out to me was I wanted to zoom in on the dog kennel area that he allegedly found their bodies. And there is one piece of shed, or maybe it is the dog kennels, that is not in the Google Earth images because it's from 2014. There's no updated version. But I was able to see the exact location of where this happened on there. And what stuck out was there's a long driveway, and then at the very end of this driveway to the left, if you're coming out of the property, there appears to be a much smaller home, and there's a car outside. I haven't gone too far into this yet. I kind of want to pull up property lines and whatnot, because I don't know whose house this is, or if this was just like another, like possibly a guest house on the property owned by the Murdaughs. If not, this house, if it's somebody else's house, is very close to where the dog kennel shooting would have happened of Paul and Maggie. Now, yes, it's down a long driveway, but it's really close. Close enough that I would think that you would definitely hear gunshots, especially the fact that 2 people were shot, and allegedly they were shot multiple times. Maybe you wouldn't hear one, but you would at least hear one out of several gunshots, at least in my opinion. Then again, it is a very vast open area, and it would depend on how, sound travels. And then way on the other side of their property is their home, which is large on Google Earth. I can only imagine how big it is in person. And behind them is like next to nothing. And I kept scrolling all through Google Earth looking for other homes because I just wanted to get an idea of neighbors. And I mean, 1,700 acres. So you don't have a lot of neighbors. And when you're looking at Google Earth for long periods of time, your eyes kind of do little tricks on you because you're staring at just like green for such a long period of time. And it's sometimes really hard to spot something, especially if it's a much smaller home. The next thing I was thinking of while looking at it was is there no cameras on this property? You have this huge 1,700 plus property, this big, gorgeous house in the middle of nowhere, which I would never want to live out there personally. It would scare the bejesus out of me. But you don't have any cameras? I don't know. I just think that would be one of the first things somebody would have. Now, they may have. I don't know. SLED hasn't shared that with us, but I would think that if anybody was caught on any camera, the investigation wouldn't be still ongoing. Now, it could have captured the sound of somebody approaching them or the gunshots. Maybe it just wasn't, in view of where it actually happened. Which, if it didn't, then you gotta say, okay, who knew that camera wasn't in view of where they were? And whoever this was needed some form of transportation to get the hell out of Dodge once it was all done, because you need a car, an ATV, a motorcycle, something with some form of wheels to get you the hell out of there. Because it's literally there's nothing out there. So getting away on foot? Nah, nope. Because you have no idea when police are going to be alerted to it and arrive, and you don't want to be this person out there just walking in the middle of nowhere. You would stand out to them, so you would need something to get you out of there fast. And we know that Alex Murdaugh called after 10 p.m. to report finding their bodies. So I was curious about nightfall and when the sun set in that area on that particular day, June 7th, and it was 8:31 p.m. So he arrived home about an hour and a half after sunset. And we don't know when they were actually killed. Investigators definitely can figure that out based on a number of different things. And it just really sticks out to me how remote this area is. And I talked about remote areas in my Summer Wells series because I was talking about their property. And while their property is rather remote, they do have neighbors that are much closer than what I'm seeing for the Moselle property that they were killed at. And what I said in the Summer Wells series was that, because I do believe that Summer Wells was abducted, and I feel that it was by somebody who was familiar with the family. Either they had been to the property several times, or were close by, or had stayed there at some point, knew the family's patterns and behaviors, and knew what little Summer would normally do. And this brings me to the Murdaugh case, because there was a friend of Maggie's who talked about Maggie went out to these dog kennels every night like clockwork. So that's a pattern in behavior, and somebody either needs to know that you do that, like this friend did, and I'm not saying she did it, I'm just saying she knew that, or somebody was watching from afar for a period of time to know that. And especially when you look at the Google Earth image, the distance between the actual house and the dog kennel, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess they could have done it at the house, but they chose out by the dog kennel. Why is that? Why did they take the opportunity at that time when both apparently were out there? And who was the target? Was it both of them? Was it just Paul and Maggie happened to be there? Was it Maggie and Paul happened to be there? Then you have to say, like, well, why was Paul out there with his mom? You know, did both of them need to go out there to take care of these dogs? Was this something that they often did together? I just don't see somebody, one day waking up being like, you know what, I need to kill, Paul Murdaugh, and then just rolling up on the house and getting lucky by chance that Alex Murdaugh wasn't there and happens to stumble upon Paul and Maggie out by these dog kennels and seizes the opportunity. Which then makes me wonder, how did this person know that Alex Murdaugh wasn't home? I mean, it could be that they were watching, But where? Or was the goal to kill all of them or whoever was at the house at that time? So many questions, my goodness. Anywho, just some ramblings of my thoughts that I had while looking at this Google Earth image. So I just saw a little while ago that Dateline is actually airing a special on the Murdaugh story tomorrow night. And Dateline claims that they're going to be going beyond the headline. To that, I say, because I have a little faith in that, because I've seen them say that before, and was greatly disappointed that even basic information about a case was wrong. So for me personally, I'm interested in seeing it, but I'm also leery, and I'm hoping that I'm not going to be, disappointed. And I'm hoping they have, a great investigative reporter or reporters who dug down deep to uncover some things maybe we don't know already. And we're just going to have to wait and see. I know that several people connected to this entire story were interviewed, like Gloria Satterfield's sons and Stephen Smith's mom. So be on the lookout for that. I believe it said it was going to be 9 p.m. Friday night. In other Murdaugh news, lawyers have filed an injunction to freeze Alex and his remaining son, Buster, who we've seen little from and heard nothing from. They want to freeze financial assets. The injunction was filed this past Friday by attorneys for Connor Cook. And Connor Cook was on the boat the night Mallory Beach lost her life in 2019. Alex's deceased son, Paul, had been charged in connection to young Mallory's death. But due to the murders of him and his mother, the trial never happened. And Connor Cook is suing, if you recall, Alex Murdaugh, since he owned the boat. And the suit claimed that Alex Murdaugh was negligent in letting Paul drive the boat, as he should have known that Paul regularly drank alcohol, that he should have known Paul was using his brother's license to buy alcohol, and an attempt to shift the blame for the accident to Connor instead of his son, Paul. Connor Cook was knocked unconscious and suffered multiple jaw fractures the evening of the crash. Now, this is saying that he should have known that Paul drank on a regular basis and that he should have known Paul was using his brother's license to buy alcohol. I mean, I get what they're going with that. At the same time, he was over 18. There's a lot of things that we do that our parents don't know about at that age. And when you're underage, I can tell you right now, I definitely did things that my mom didn't know about. So, I mean, you can try to hold him accountable and say, well, you should have known, but what if he really didn't know? And maybe Paul kept it from him. I don't know. So that's going to be an interesting lawsuit to follow along with, to see how that goes. And the attorneys are seeking to basically stop Alex and Buster from disposing of the assets until there's resolution of the lawsuit filed by their client, Connor Cook. And they're also asking the court to appoint 2 people to be independent representatives over the Murdaugh's assets as well, in order to investigate, locate, and protect all of the assets. Attorneys for 3 of the civil suits against Alex want this because there is fear that Alex is trying to hide millions of dollars. They allege that he's shifting money to unknown accounts and sold off property after he turned over all his affairs to Buster Murdaugh. Quote, there is good reason to believe that Alex Murdaugh, on his own accord and or by and through his agents, representatives, or attorney, in fact, has improperly transferred, sold, encumbered, or otherwise disposed of assets improperly, thereby impairing plaintiff's ability to recover damages in this action, unquote, said Connor Cook's lawyers about the injunction. And in more Murdaugh news, the attorneys for the estate of Alex's former housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, they reached a settlement with Alex's former law firm, which was called Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Ellsroth, and Detrick, PMPED. And obviously Alex is not a part of that, but his brother still is. So they didn't change the name completely, but there's one less Murdaugh there. The Satterfields and the Murdaugh law firm reconciled their differences. No further comments were given by anybody involved in that. And the suit was filed in September. So that's a rather quick conclusion. And I think the law firm is going to want to resolve anything connected to Alex Murdaugh as fast as possible as a form of damage control for their reputation. And I think so far they have shown they're rather stunned and appalled at all that has happened and what Alex has done. It remains to really be seen if any one of them had a clue or even some type of hint to what Alex was doing in the darkness. Gloria's family is going to be on the Dateline episode, and what I believe is their first television interview since finding out that SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, as a reminder, opened an investigation into Gloria's death due to the coroner's request claiming that Gloria's death was not reported to them at the time, nor was an autopsy performed. In addition, on the death certificate, the manner of death was ruled natural, which is inconsistent with injuries sustained in a trip and fall accident. Gloria was airlifted, as we previously discussed, and she was unconscious for weeks before she passed away. So it was only Alex who was able to tell what happened at his home with Gloria, and it was his claim that she tripped over his dogs and, fell accident. Which I pointed out to you in one of my videos because it was just an observation that I made, that his claim with Gloria was that she tripped over his dogs, right? And when he finds Paul and Maggie, it's by the dog kennels. Now, that might not mean anything at all. It's just something that stuck out to me. And this is also the first time seeing and hearing from Gloria's family since they found out that a suit filed after her death that they thought Alex and his college friend, fellow attorney Corey Fleming had handled. But it turned out that it got settled for $2.7 million, and they didn't even know that it got settled, and they never saw a dime of it until after investigative reporters showed up in Hampton County after the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. Now that was $2.7 million, right? And there was $7 million that was for lawyers, okay, out of the settlement. Now with all of this happening and the fact that Alex, had set up an account and took the money, etc., they definitely made out with way more than originally was settled for. So way more than $2.7 million. And because I like to keep track and just so that we can keep things all in a row here, and focus on these specific things because it can get so confusing, we have 5 significant events: Stephen Smith's death, Gloria Satterfield's death, Mallory Beach's death, Paul and Maggie's death, and then Alex's insurance scheme shooting. We have 5 total deaths: Stephen Smith, Gloria Satterfield, Mallory Beach, and then Paul and Maggie. We have 5 felony charges filed against Alex Murdaugh. There's 5 lawsuits against Alex Murdaugh. And You can say it's either 5 or 6, depending if you want to count Paul and Maggie as one or separate. But you have SLED is investigating Alex's misappropriating of funds, Alex's shooting on the side of the road involving the insurance fraud scheme, Stephen's death, Gloria's death, and then Paul and Maggie's death. If we count that as 5, making Paul and Maggie's murder one investigation, okay? That's 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. The last 5 is that 5 people on the boat the night that Mallory Beach died made it out of it alive. So this number 5 is huge in this story right now. And I'm not like a huge numbers person, but once in a blue moon, numbers like stick out so much to me. And I'm like, all right, that's a little weird. It's just odd that number is matching with that number, and what's the odds of that and whatnot. One of the biggest things in this story that always sticks out to me is that on June 4th, that is when they were trying to get the financial records from the Murdaughs. And then 3 days later is when Paul and Maggie were killed. And Alex's shooting was on September 4th. So June 4th was them trying to get the financial records, which was the 3 days prior. And then, 3 months to the day later, on September 4th, is when Alex tried to do this insurance fraud scheme with allegedly Curtis Edward Smith. Now, that could mean absolutely nothing, but that just sticks out to me. And like I said, I'm not a huge numbers person, but once in a while, I don't know, sometimes I feel like they could mean something. So 5 significant events, 5 deaths, 5 SLED investigations, you can maybe say it's 6, 5 felony charges, 5 lawsuits, and 5 people who survived the boat crash. Millions of dollars are missing. Countless lives have been destroyed, whether directly or indirectly. And I've asked this in the last few videos, where the hell is the money? Where? Somebody, please, I cannot wrap my head around this. Where is the money? For the love of all things, where is it? Give me the financial breakdown so I can play accountant for a few days, because I need to know. I just need to know. Because I'm a regular old person, right? We don't make tons of money here at my house. We make what we make to pay our bills, have a little extra, and that's it. If I have millions of dollars, you're going to know about it, period. I mean, come on. So it just blows my mind that it feels like there's just millions and millions of dollars either unaccounted for, missing somewhere else. I don't know. Is he sending it to the Virgin Islands? Like, what's going on here with this freaking money? I just can't make sense of it. I feel something in my gut. I don't know why I feel this way. I almost just feel like he was using some of this money to pay someone off. For what? I don't know. Who? No freaking clue. I just have that feeling. It just seems like so much money. And how long was he doing this for? How many people did he do it to? How many millions of dollars are we talking about here? And the biggest question is, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Money, it's the root of all evil. Sounds amazing to have millions of dollars. But look at this. Look at this story. Look at that. I mean, does it make life better? Is it worth it? I'm going with no. I wonder if Alex thinks it's worth it or was worth it. I just want to know how long this has been going on for. And I need to make a correction because I thought I saw Stephen Smith's mother in the Dateline episode trailer, but it's not her apparently, because I actually just for a second here wanted to check to see who was going to be in it, And so I quickly did a Google search while I was recording. I had to pause for a minute because my kids were being really loud in the background. And so I took that opportunity to look it up. And I came across an article that, Stephen Smith's family lawyer, Andy Savage, gave to ABC4 News. And he said here that, quote, "There are suspects we have in sight that are unconnected to the Murdaughs," unquote. He also said, quote, "The focus in the media have on Murdaugh may be unfounded," unquote. Savage said details on other potential suspects in the case of Stephen Smith have since come to light, in part through work by a private investigator his firm has employed. And given what has been found through ongoing investigations, Savage said the family and his firm are going to be staying silent on the case going forward, referring to the Murdaugh case. So this is really interesting. And you know what? Stephen Smith's case was opened with SLED after the deaths of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh based on evidence that they uncovered. And in one of my first episodes of this story, we talked about Stephen Smith's case file that the Highway Patrol had originally did on his death. And there were several people named that could have been involved with his death. And the Murdaugh name did come up, I think it was about 40 times, mostly about Buster Murdaugh, not Paul Murdaugh. But it seemed to me that every person that was mentioned that could possibly be involved was based on town gossip, rumor type of accusations. So if at the end of the day, the Murdaughs are not involved in Stephen Smith's death, okay, I'm just glad that SLED opened the investigation into his death, and maybe they can find out who really did it and get the mother some closure, because she does not believe that, her son was killed by a hit and run driver. One of the troopers actually noted that the body was discovered and the scene looked staged. SLED actually assisted Highway Patrol initially in the investigation and later opened their own investigation after Paul and Maggie, but they've never actually clarified or said what information or evidence was uncovered related to Maggie and Paul Murdaugh's murders that led them to want to re-examine Stephen Smith's death. We just talked about how there is 5 SLED investigations that have been opened. So you can say 6 if you want Paul and Maggie to be separated. So in those 5 investigations, we're just going to say, it was Paul and Maggie first, obviously, and then the first one after that was Stephen Smith. So it was opened rather quickly after the double murder. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. She is not going to be in the Dateline episode, it seems, so that's my fault. I could have sworn that this woman in the trailer looked just like her. And at the end of the day, I hope that she gets answers and has some, closure once they finish the investigation, and hopefully they figure out what happened to her son. The more I talk about this case, the more I think about the residents of this area, Hampton County, and what they must be feeling with all that is happening and the media coverage and the amount of reporters that have ascended on to Hampton County. And I say that because I've thought about that before, but even more so after last night, Brian Ensign, who's one of the main reporters on the Gabby Petito case, he traveled out to Utah, all the way up to Wyoming, to retrace Gabby and Brian's last, moments of their trip. And while he was there, he was looking into the deaths of the newlyweds who were killed in Moab, Utah, around the same time that Brian and Gabby were in that area. And when he went to Moab, Utah, he basically tweeted out how the locals there are kind of annoyed by all the media coverage because it's a tourist town and you have this unsolved murder of newlyweds. And then you have Gabby's death, which she didn't die in Moab, but their domestic incident was in Moab, Utah, and she died in Wyoming. But it's still bringing media attention for both people, Gabby's story and this unsolved murder. Plus, that case of the two women has not been solved. Nobody has been charged or arrested, so there's a fear that somebody who did it possibly still lives in the area. So all this media attention is really not welcomed in Moab, Utah. So then you look at this story, right? Hampton County. This is huge, big, prominent name in the area. Everybody seems to fear this family. They have a lot of, I guess you would call, quote-unquote, power, even though Alex Murdaugh does not seem like some big and powerful type of person at all. And you have, the death of Stephen Smith, and then the death of the housekeeper, and then Paul and Maggie, and then Mallory, and then Alex's insurance scheme fraud thing. And so you gotta wonder, what are these residents thinking? The people that have to live here with all these reporters and whatnots out there. Oof. But similar to Moab, Utah story, this was also a double murder, and nobody has been arrested or charged. And SLED said that there was no immediate threat to the public. Which, if nobody's been charged with their deaths, that's going to concern residents. Because they're like, okay, well, is there a killer on the loose out there who may be hurting, could hurt somebody else? Or was this specific to these two people? So their statement leads me to believe that they have some form of evidence that shows that this person, whoever it was, specifically wanted to take out members of this family. I don't want to believe that they would say that there's no immediate threat to the public if that's not true, to mislead the residents. And I'm sure that even though they said this, they still have that concern that there is somebody out there who could possibly strike again and kill somebody in the Hampton County area or surrounding areas. So yeah, that's why I say countless lives have been affected by this. Not just the people like Alex and Buster and Paul and Maggie and Gloria and her family and Mallory and her family and the friends, and it even goes deeper than that. There's a lot. There's the law partners, there's the residents, there's the colleagues in the judicial court. So many people are affected by one person's choices and decisions. And possibly one other person, if it's not Alex, who killed his wife and son. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Nice, short, and sweet. And to the point. Obviously, this is not over. There's a lot for us to follow with this, and there's going to be a lot more to come, no doubt about it. Thanks for listening to my ramblings and off the top of my head thoughts. Sometimes I get a little out there. I'm sorry. Sometimes thoughts just kind of flow through the brain and comes out the mouth. I can't help it. And I like to really get into things and process my thoughts. And sometimes I can do it in my brain. And sometimes it feels fantastic to just say it out loud, as if you're here with me, because that also helps me process. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where the hell is the money? Where is the money? Please, somebody tell me where the money is. I've thought of every possible thing that it could be on where this money is or it went. Where is it? Somebody, you have an idea? Share it with me, because I'm at a loss. The only thing I keep coming back to is that Alex was paying someone for something. Who? What? I have no idea, but that's my gut reaction to all of this money not being accounted for. And if he's been doing this a long time, there's no telling how many millions of dollars we're talking about here. I mean, goodness, it's gotta be... if he's been doing it for let's just say 4 or 5 years, goodness, we're probably talking well over $100 million. Maybe even closer to $500 million for all we know. Anyway, that's it. Until next time, I'll see you soon.